Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we finally managed to reach expert, and I really thought I was going to get there a little bit earlier because if you guys recall from my last video, I left off at 3 points away from expert, so we were 2747 elo. But of course the game isn't going to make it that easy for me. I just needed to win one more set, and instead of winning one set, I went on a lovely lose streak. I ended up dropping to the 2500s, and I had to basically climb my way back up. It took me like 3 days, but we finally made it. And today I'm going to share with you guys the two teams that helped me climb back up and cross the finish line. Well, it's not the finish line yet. We still want to reach legend, but I mean, it's pretty good for, it's still pretty early in the season, so I'm really happy that I was able to reach experts now. So the first team is going to be Azu Double Ice. That is going to be Azu with Shadow Walrein and Shadow Alolan Sandslash in the back. This team doesn't really have a safe swap. Actually, both teams I'm going to show you guys today don't really have safe swaps. They're both going to be ABB teams. And depending on what you lose lead to, if you lose lead, you'll pick one of your Bs as a safe swap or a pivot, and you'll just go along with that. So I'll get into a little bit of explanation with the two teams, but the second team is one that I ended up running into so many times. So I'm gonna put it out there. It is not my own creation. But I ran into it a lot, and I started getting super annoyed because I was absolutely getting destroyed by this team. It is going to be Shadow Drapion on the lead with Azu and Shadow Feraligatr in the back. So whoever created this team, congratulations. It is such an annoying team, but also such a strong team. So out of spite, I decided to run it, and it ended up working way too well. I got a 5-0. I'm going to show you guys the 5-0 in this video. And that was the 5-0 I needed to reach experts. And then after that, actually, I went back to using my Double Ice team, and I got another 5-0. I am now in the 2800s with it. That was like a couple hours ago. I just played that team and I got a 5-0 with it. So both teams against the current meta that I am seeing are really, really good. I don't know about lower elos, but in higher elos, ice types right now are super strong because not a lot of people are running fighters, and a lot of people are running backlines that are entirely weak to ice types. So I was seeing a lot of Clodsires, I was seeing a lot of flyers like Mandibuzz and Moltres. I was also seeing a lot of Driftblim. So obviously ice types are going to be really good against that, and of course they are going to be good against Diggersby, which is very, very common. The only thing you really need to watch out for with this first team is electric types. Those are very unfortunate for the team. If you run into a Morpeko, consider top lefting immediately. I usually don't. I'll try to, I don't know, I'll try to play around it as much as I can, and then I'll give up. But putting it out there, it is weak to electric types, but I was taking advantage of the fact that I was not seeing a lot of electric types in the meta. All right, I'm going to stop rambling here because I have a lot of battles to cover. You'll notice that we start off in the really low 2600s, and then at the end of this video, of course, we are going to make it past 2770. So in this first match, well, not the first match, but in the first match I'm going to cover, we were up against an Azu on the lead. I wanted to save my Azu and swap out into one of my ice types in case I had to draw out a fighter. I didn't want my Azu to go down to my opponent's Azu, so I bring in Walrein. We draw out a Corsola. At least my opponent, it looks like, isn't going to have a fighter in the back, but what they do have is they have a Guzzlord, and both of the Pokemon that I have remaining are going to be very good against Guzzlord. I'm able to go for an Ice Punch, take the Guzzlord out, and then here I'm just going to go for an Ice Punch against this Azu because it does a lot of damage, and I know I'm going to be able to Powder Snow them down, and my opponent is just going to go ahead and top left. Moving on to the next battle, we're going to be up against a Talonflame on the lead, which is a really nice lead for us. And my opponent swaps into an Amoonguss. Okay, so here I actually think I should have brought in Walrein, but I bring in my Alolan Sandslash. I'm going to go for these Ice Punches to take this Amoonguss out, and I wanted to leave with one Ice Punch loaded up. That way I can do some damage to the Talonflame, and of course I am going to bring my Azu back in. Okay, now my opponent's final Pokemon is going to be Ferrothorn, which is really bad for the two Pokemon I have left because both are going to take super effective from grass type moves, and also Ferrothorn is part steel type, so it is going to take neutral from the ice type moves from Walrein. However, I'm going to go ahead and invest both of my shields into Walrein, and my opponent is going ahead and shielding up here as well. And now I think I am going to be able to get them into a range where I can come in with Azu and bubble them down before they can make it to another Power Whip. So I'm still in a really good position here because my Azu is still basically full HP, and all my opponent has left is that Talonflame. Brave Bird is not going to be able to one-shot Azu, and my opponent is going to go ahead and top left. So GG's to our opponent, and that is going to be a 4-1 in that first set, really helping us regain a lot of points from that drop. Yeah, that is about a 60-point gain. I think the one loss that I got was a draw, so that's why I got a lot of points for that 4-1. But anyways, moving on to the next battle. On the lead, we are going to see a Galarian Corsola, and what I do in this match is not ideal because I end up staying in this lead with Azu, and what I should have done is weaken the Galarian Corsola and then swap into one of my back Pokemon. As with any ABB team, you want to swap into one of your B Pokemon to draw out what the backline is going to be weak to, and then with that out of the way, then your second B Pokemon should be able to sweep. But I end up letting Azu go, so if my opponent has a fighter in the back, then I am in a really, really bad position. But I figured that maybe my opponent is not going to run a fighter with Galarian Corsola, so let's say an Annihilate. It doesn't make sense to have Annihilate in the back with that Galarian Corsola on the lead because then the team is going to be weak to a lot of ghost types. But then also weak to some flyers like Mandibuzz, Pidgeot, and Moltres, but it ends up working out for us in the end because my backline ends up countering their backline, and we take that win. Now moving on to the next match, we are going to be up against a Pokemon that is going to be a little bit of an issue for this team, and that is going to be Shadow Feraligatr. Shadow Feraligatr technically counters this entire team. It can beat all of the Pokemon on this team. So the way I like to play this out is I will try to get both of my opponent's shields out of the way. So I'm going to go ahead and shield the next Hydro Cannon here. That way I can get the second Play Rough off and my opponent gives up their second shield. Okay, then I am going to swap into my Walrein. I'm not going to swap into my Alolan Sandslash because Walrein is going to be resisting the Hydro Cannons and the Ice Beams from Feraligatr, but my opponent ends up swapping into a Ferrothorn. So I let Walrein go. I still have a shield left. I'm going to save my final shield for Alolan Sandslash. I know that I can take care of the Feraligatr with the Alolan Sandslash. I'm going to go for an Ice Punch because I think it comes really close to KOing, but I just needed one more Powder Snow there to take it out. And I end up making a huge mistake because I should have just taken it out with the Alolan Sandslash, but I bring in Azu, and my opponent's final Pokemon is an Azu of their own. They end up farming us down, which is very unfortunate because now all that energy is going to be able to beat our Alolan Sandslash, even though it's all going to be resisted. My opponent is going to be able to take us out with the Play Rough here, and they are going to take that win. So Shadow Feraligatr, really annoying for this team, and that's why in the end I ended up running the Drapion, Shadow Feraligatr, and Azu team. But still, this double ice team is super fun. Anyways, moving on to the next battle, we are going to be up against a Wigglytuff on the lead. Now, the reason I end up staying in this lead is because usually a Wigglytuff lead is going to be paired with ground types in the back. Not a lot of people are running fighters with Wigglytuff lead. Otherwise, the team is going to be weak to poison types. So I'm staying in this, and I'm thinking my opponent might have Mudslap users in the back, but they end up having a Steelix, and for some reason here I go for Ice Punch and not Drill Run. I don't know what I was doing here. I think I was multitasking, but I go for that Ice Punch, which is such a questionable move, and then I go for another Ice Punch here, which I think should be enough to take this out. Yeah, we're able to take the Steelix out. We still have 2 shields for our Alolan Sandslash. They are going to bring that Wigglytuff back in and go for a Swift. I am going to be able to go for an Ice Punch here to take the Wigglytuff out, and then I swap immediately into my Walrein. My opponent's final Pokemon is a Bastiodon, which is very unfortunate for us, but at the same time, we are going to be able to take this Bastiodon out with an Earthquake and an Icicle Spear from our Walrein, live with very little HP, and we take that win. GG's to our opponent. Moving on to the next battle, we're going to be up against a Drapion on the lead. I will usually stay in against Drapion leads because their charge moves are going to be resisted by Azu. Crunch is going to hurt both of the Pokemon that I have in the back, so I'm just going to go for these play roughs, expecting my opponent to use a shield on their Drapion, and they are going to go for a Crunch here. I reach that Ice Beam, and I decide to let my Azu go. I'm going to save both of my shields for my backline. I'm going to bring in my Alolan Sandslash here and go ahead and shield whatever my opponent is going to throw, and I go for an Ice Punch here. Hopefully my opponent does not use their final shield. If they don't, we're able to take that Drapion out, but unfortunately we are debuffed, which is so annoying. So I'm going to go for a Drill Run against their Azu, and then I am going to swap into Walrein. Okay, we're going to take that first play rough. That's fine. I'm going to go for an Earthquake and really hope that my opponent is not going to shield. They don't, which is really good for us. And their final Pokemon is a Galarian Moltres. Okay, we can take their final shield with an Icicle Spear. And now our Alolan Sandslash comes in, and I kind of have to shield the Ancient Powers because they are going to hit for neutral. I'm going to be able to take them out with an Ice Punch, but I wasn't able to farm too much energy because my opponent was going to be able to reach another Ancient Power. So we have to take this play rough and really hope that we can survive it and reach another Ice Punch to take their Azu out, and we take that win. GG's to our opponent, and that is going to be another 4-1 with this double ice team. I am really enjoying using it. If you guys want, definitely try it out. I just hope that in whatever ELO you're at, you're not seeing a lot of double fighter teams, but that is going to take us into the 2700s. All right, so this next set I actually played at midnight of the following day because I was getting so impatient. So as soon as my sets reset, I sat down, I played them all, and of course, I ended up staying exactly where I was. I didn't climb and I didn't drop at least. So that's a lesson in patience. I should have been patient. But here we are going to be up against a Stunfisk, a Unova Stunfisk on the lead, which is going to be terrible for my team. But I do manage to draw the fighter out with my Alolan Sandslash. So at least there's that. And I am going to swap into my Walrein for the Stunfisk. It looks like whatever my opponent's third Pokemon is, it might be really weak to ice types, which is why they ended up double shielding their Stunfisk. So I am going to be able to take them out with an Icicle Spear. And yes, my opponent's final Pokemon is a Jumpluff. We are going to be able to go for an Icicle Spear against the Jumpluff and then Powder Snow them down. And we take that win. GG's to my opponent, and that was also a friend. So we get a little bit of a friendship level up. Moving on to the next battle. Again, we are going to be up against that really annoying Shadow Fur Alligator. I am going to play this out the way I always do. Unfortunately, I can't really swap into one of my back Pokemon. So if my opponent has a fighter in the back, that is not going to be good for me. I'm going to go for a play rough here and get a shield from my opponent. We reach another play rough, take their second shield, and then I swap into Walrein. I can go ahead and take the first Hyder Cannon. It is going to be resisted, but it's still going to do almost 50% health, to my Walrein because Walrein in Great League and also being Shadow is pretty squishy. So unfortunately, I can't take a second Hydro Cannon. However, my opponent's entire backline is going to be super weak to ice types because they are going to have a Diggersby. I'm going to let my Walrein go here. And then I am going to bring in my Alolan Sandslash. I'm just saving that final shield for my Alolan Sandslash. I should be able to take the Diggersby out with an Ice Punch. And my opponent's final Pokemon is going to be a Clodsire. They actually went ahead and caught the Ice Punch on their Clodsire, but I'm able to take their Clodsire out before they can go for an Earthquake, and my opponent is going to go ahead and top left. On to the next battle. Again, another Talonflame on the lead, which is a really good lead for us, but my opponent swaps into that dreaded Feraligatr. Okay, I'm going to bait with an Ice Beam this time because my opponents are always shielding. So we managed to take a shield from them. Of course, I'm going to let the Hydro Cannons go. And at this point, I am just hoping that I'm going to be able to take care of that Talonflame with my Walrein. I'm going to go ahead and shield here because I really want to get the next Play Rough off. That way I can either get this Feraligatr lower, which I do. Okay, they let it go. Or I could take their final shield, but I bring in Walrein and my opponent's final Pokemon is a Morpeko, which is not good for me. I really needed this Walrein for that Talonflame because Talonflame is absolutely going to destroy my Alolan Sandslash. But lucky for me, they let the Icicle Spear go. I am going to be able to reach another Icicle Spear. My opponent gets really greedy here because they want to farm me down completely. But if my opponent is only running flying type moves on this Talonflame, then I might be able to take them out with my Alolan Sandslash, and it looks like they might have been running Fly and Brave Bird because they go ahead and they top left. So I was really lucky that I was able to get that Talonflame low enough to where my Alolan Sandslash can then come in and potentially Powder Snow them down. But GG's to our opponent. Moving on to the next battle, we are going to be up against a Shadow Drapion on the lead, and I think this is where I start seeing that Drapion double water team. And at this point, I am fighting for my life because I need one more win in this set to reach Expert because a 4-1 will definitely get me past 2,750, but a 2-3 is not going to cut it. Or sorry, a 3-2 is not going to cut it. So I managed to take a shield from them with Azu, and then I swap into Walrein to avoid being farmed down because Drapion with energy for my backline is very scary. So I bring in Walrein, and my opponent is going to bring in an Azu of their own. So it is looking like they are going to have that Feraligatr in the back. Now I start playing this really poorly. I end up catching the Play Rough here, which is nice. But here I mess up. I wanted to come in with a Alolan Sandslash to farm the Azu down. I mistap. I tap on the Walrein, and that allows my opponent to come in with Feraligatr, farm our Walrein down, and have a lot of energy. And now I'm just going to go ahead and give up because there is no way I am going to be able to win this because Feraligatr has 2 Hydro Cannons, and it is going to be enough to take our Alolan Sandslash out. So when I start getting nervous, I start making mistakes, but that is going to be a loss. And then the next game is also going to be a loss. We get absolutely destroyed by Dugong. And then for the rest of the evening, I just kept seeing that Drapion Feraligatr Azu team, and I was getting super annoyed. And like I said, we went on a little bit of a lose streak, but I did manage to regain some points at the end of the evening, and so I didn't end up dropping that much. But that brings us to today, where I decided to run this really annoying team, and to my surprise, it worked out. So I was actually pretty relaxed playing these games because I was trying out the team for the first time, and I wasn't thinking about reaching experts. But anyways, in the first match, we are going to be up against that Goodra on the lead, and lucky for me, my opponent actually ends up swapping into their Drapion. I decide to stay in, and I am actually going to be able to take them out with the Aqua Tail from my Drapion. And we also managed to take a shield from them in that matchup. So now my opponent is going to bring that Goodra back in. I am going to be able to align my Azu to it. Unfortunately, they are running Power Whip, and that is really going to hurt. And it looks like my opponent's final Pokemon is going to be a Cresselia. I am running Crunch on my Feraligatr, so that's really lucky for me. I am going to be able to bring in Feraligatr and go for a Crunch and then a full farm down to come out with so much energy for the Goodra. I am going to go for a Crunch against the Goodra. Of course, my opponent is going to let it go because they want to save a shield for the energy that I have on Azu. But I was going to be able to reach another Ice Beam if my opponent didn't throw their energy. However, it's still over for my opponent because I'm still going to be able to reach a Hydro Cannon on my Feraligatr, take them out, and we are going to take that first win. Now we are at 2,704 elo in this set, so I wasn't sure if a 4-1 would be enough to reach Expert or if I needed the 5-0. But anyways, moving on to the next match, we are going to be up against a Drifblim on the lead, which is a really good lead for us, and then my opponent swaps into Wigglytuff. I go for 2 Aqua Tails and my opponent actually lets them go, and then I bring in Azu. So both of the Pokemon that I have in the back can take care of the Drifblim. But my opponent ends up bringing a, what's this called? It's the new doggy that looks really delicious. Is it Dash Bun? Something like that. But they end up bringing the new Charmer, and I am going to be able to go for a couple of moves against this Pokemon. Get them really low. I probably could have gone for that Play Rough against this Pokemon, but my opponent didn't want to give up any shields there. I am going to be able to go for an Aqua Tail against this Drifblim and finally get a shield out of them. And now I am going to come in with Feraligatr and go for a full farm down. I'm not even going to throw a single move against this Drifblim, but I do manage to catch an Icy Wind onto my Azu, which is really nice. But at the same time, they get to farm us down, but at least we get to clear the debuff. That way we are going to be able to Shadow Claw their Drifblim down and take that win. Alright, moving on to the next battle, we're going to be up against a Clodsire on the lead, which is not a great lead for us because we have to watch out for that Earthquake, but at least we're going to be able to hit for super effective with the Aqua Tails. Now, I have to go ahead and shield here. Even if my opponent is going to bait, it is too risky to call a bait and then it ends up being an Earthquake. So they end up baiting with a Stone Edge, so I know they're not running Sludge Bomb, so I'm going to go for that third Aqua Tail, take a shield from them, and then I am going to swap into Azu. We managed to draw out a Feraligatr, but we all know that Feraligatr can comfortably beat Azu. However, they are not going to invest their final shield. They let the Play Rough go. I am going to be able to reach another Play Rough as well, and this Feraligatr is not Shadow, so the third Hydro Cannon is not going to be enough to take us out. I am going to go for an Ice Beam because I think an Ice Beam will be enough. Yes, it is, and my opponent brings in a Drifblim instead of bringing in their Clodsire. I am going to bring in my Drapion, and I'm just keeping in mind that my opponent has an Earthquake banked. So I'm not going to shield the Icy Wind. I take the Icy Wind and then I swap into my Feraligatr. I go ahead and shield. They end up baiting again with that Stone Edge. And now I am going to have to take an Earthquake from them. But at least I'm able to farm them down. And now I am going to be able to go for a Crunch against the Drifblim. It one-shots. And we are going to take another win there. So far this is going really well for me. But now the pressure is on because I have been in this situation several times in the past 3 days where I've needed one more win and then failed miserably. So moving on to the next battle, it wasn't looking good for me when my opponent brought out that Morpeko, but they led Jumpluff. I now have to stay in against this Morpeko with my Drapion and go for the Aqua Tails. But when they change form and when they use their second shield, I decide to swap into my Azu. So my opponent has no shields left. I go ahead and shield the electric version of their Aura Wheel, and I am going to be able to go for an Ice Beam to take them out. I should also be able to go for an Ice Beam here to get the Jumpluff really low. So we get them into the yellow. Now they are going to be able to take us out with an Energy Ball, and I'm just hoping that whatever my opponent's third Pokemon is, I can handle it with a very low HP Drapion and a Feraligatr. My opponent's final Pokemon is a Whiscash. Okay, I'm only going to be able to land one Hydro Cannon on this Whiscash because they were ahead by a little bit of energy, but hopefully I can get them into Aqua Tail range at least. Yeah, I don't think I should go for a crunch. I also need to farm up a little bit of extra energy. Otherwise, my opponent is going to get to an aerial ace before I get to the crunch on Jumpluff. But we managed to take the Whiscash out with an Aqua Tail and then reach a crunch on the Jumpluff and take that win. Again, fighting for my life. I needed that win, but I still wasn't sure that 4-1 was going to be enough. I might need the 5-0, so pressure was still high. And of course, in the next game, I get a not so great lead of Diggersby into my Drapion. Now, I make a prediction that probably ended up winning me the game, but that is that Diggersby lead is almost always going to have a Toxapex in the back. And what do I decide to do? I decide to swap into Feraligatr to draw that Toxapex out. We are running Crunch on Feraligatr, which is gonna hit for neutral. We can get this thing really, really low and then take care of it with Drapion. And then hopefully, Azu can take care of whatever my opponent is going to have in the back. It ends up working out for me exactly how I want it to. I was almost able to Poison Sting that Toxapex down, but then my opponent swaps back out into Diggersby. I am going to be able to farm them down now with my Azu. The Scorching Sands is not going to do too much damage, and we are going to be able to leave this with a lot of energy. My opponent's final Pokemon is an Annihilate. So this is going really well for me. We got that Toxapex out of the way with the Feraligatr, and now it is going to be Azu versus Annihilate. I have a lot of energy on both of the Pokemon that I have remaining. I swap back out into Drapion when my opponent brings in that Toxapex. They probably tried to catch the next move that I was going to throw from Azu, but it ends up working against them because now I'm able to take their final shield with my Drapion and then go for a play rough from my Azu, take that Annihilate out, and we manage to get the 5-0, which is definitely going to get us over the 2,750s. And we are going to get Expert in this set. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you've made it this far, I really hope that you guys enjoyed those battles as much as I enjoyed playing them. If you guys like my content, please consider subscribing. Maybe leave a like. It helps me out so much. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye bye.